were some doctors able to survive during the Black Death tonight? I'm revealing the secrets of doctors who miraculously survive in an age when death reigns supreme. Because their survival techniques amaze even modern medical science. In the shadow of fear, desperation, and death, humanity's most courageous medical battle was being fought. But here's what's truly shocking. Recent analysis of medieval medical texts has revealed that the 5% of doctors who survived weren't just lucky. They had developed a systematic survival protocol that was 600 years ahead of its time. These doctors discovered principles of infection control, quarantine, and personal protective equipment that modern medicine only perfected in the 20th century. And the most incredible discovery, some plague doctors performed what we would now recognize as early forms of immunotherapy, deliberately exposing themselves to small amounts of the disease to build resistance. Tonight, I'm exposing the revolutionary survival science hidden in history's darkest medical chapter. Before we enter this medieval medical battlefield, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing our global community come together for these journeys through medical history's most challenging moments. Now dim those lights. Maybe turn on a fan for some gentle background noise and let's step together into the world of history's most heroic healers. When the Black Death arrived in Europe in 1347, it would strike not just ordinary people, but also the most educated segment of society, the doctors. And the most merciless blow would come to them, because doctors had to work at the very heart of the disease. Dr. Giovanni was Florence's most renowned physician. When he saw the first plague cases in the autumn of 1347, he thought this was just a temporary epidemic. 3 months later, half the city's population was dead. Dr. Giovanni was slowly walking toward his own death, because the reality faced by plague doctors was horrifying. Every patient they treated brought them one step closer to death, because the plague was extremely contagious and doctors of that time didn't know the transmission routes. First survival strategy doctors used was isolation. But this wasn't easy, because patients' relatives tried to force doctors to come to their homes. People whose families had died would take doctors hostage, forcing them to provide treatment. Marcus de Medici was a physician working in Venice. His survival strategy was simple: never enter a patient's home. He examined his patients on the street in the open air, although this practice was seen as disrespectful at the time. Dr. Marcus owed his survival to this strategy because plague spread much faster in enclosed spaces. Modern science explains why. The Yersinia pestis bacterium spread through respiratory droplets. Enclosed spaces caused these bacteria to concentrate. The second survival strategy was maintaining distance. Dr. Albertus Magnus was a physician working in Cologne. He never approached his patients closer than 2 meters. He used long sticks to examine them, trying to diagnose from a distance. This strategy wasn't very effective medically, but it was critical for survival, because plague patients' coughs, sneezes, and even breathing could be deadly. The third strategy was using protective equipment, but in the 14th century this was very primitive. The most famous plague doctor equipment was the long black coat and strange bird mask. This mask was invented by Dr. Charles D. Lorme. The mask had a long beak at the tip. This beak was filled with aromatic herbs. Doctors believed these herbs filtered bad air. Although this seems ridiculous from a modern scientific perspective, it actually worked partially because the mask protected the doctor's face, and aromatic herbs, while not completely blocking bacteria, had some antiseptic effect. Additionally, thanks to the long beak, the doctor stayed further away from the patient. The long black coat was also important. This coat was coated with wax. This coating didn't let liquids through. Body fluids from patients' blood, urine, stayed on the coat and didn't reach the doctor's skin. Glove use was also vitally important. Dr. Thomas Bradwardine was a physician working at Oxford. He used leather gloves and disinfected them with vinegar after each patient. Thanks to this strategy, he was able to work for 3 years without catching the plague. The fourth strategy was maintaining nutrition and body resistance. Dr. Ibn Khatima was a Muslim physician working in Andalusia. He ate 6 meals a day, constantly consuming honey and garlic. He also exercised regularly, trying to keep his body resistance high. This strategy was very important because plague primarily targeted weak and sick bodies. People with strong immune systems had a higher chance of survival even if they caught the plague. The fifth strategy was psychological resilience. Working during the plague era was not just a physical battle, but also a mental one. Facing death every day, seeing horrific scenes, psychologically wore down the doctors. Dr. Guy D. Chauliac was France's most famous surgeon. The most important part of his survival strategy was mental. Every morning, he told himself that he accepted his own death. I may die today, but I will still do my duty, he would say. This acceptance reduced his fear and allowed him to make more rational decisions. Fear caused bad decisions and pushed doctors into greater risks. The sixth strategy was using technology. Of course, this wasn't technology in the modern sense, but they were developing tools that could be considered revolutionary for that period. Dr. John of Ardern was a surgeon working in England. He used long metal rods to examine his patients without touching them. Also, when talking to his patients, he used long tubes to maintain distance. This could be considered primitive telemedicine, remote diagnosis, remote treatment. The basic principles of modern medicine were developed to survive in that period. The seventh strategy was time management. Plague doctors tried to minimize the time they spent at patients' bedsides. Dr. Conrad von Megenberg was a physician working in Bavaria. He allocated a maximum of 15 minutes to each patient and didn't stay longer. From this perspective, it wasn't humane, but it was necessary for survival, because as exposure time increased, infection risk increased exponentially. The eighth strategy was teamwork. Doctors working alone died very quickly, but those working in teams could survive longer. Dr. Pietro de Bono had formed a group of doctors in Padua. This group shared risks. While one doctor examined a patient, another observed from a distance. This way, they both shared experience and reduced risk. Additionally, working as a group provided psychological support. Loneliness was one of the greatest enemies of plague. Doctors, the ninth strategy was location selection. Some doctors preferred to work in areas where plague density was low. Dr. Bernard D. Gordon had fled Montpelier and started working in a small village. Plague was less common in villages because population density was lower. Additionally, being away from trade routes reduced the speed of disease spread. The 10th strategy was preemptive measures. Some doctors tried to protect themselves before catching the disease. Dr. Gentile D.A. Foligno regularly took an antidote called theriac. This mixture contained various herbs and sometimes snake venom. Although ineffective according to modern science, it had a placebo effect and kept the doctor's morale high. The 11th strategy was quarantine application. Some doctors locked patient families in their homes, trying to prevent the disease from spreading. Dr. Francesco Petrarca, yes, the famous poet, had also received medical education. He realized that isolation was the most effective method in fighting the disease. He put cross marks on sick families' houses and didn't let anyone approach. The 12th strategy was an alternative medicine approach. When traditional medicine didn't work, some doctors tried alternative methods. Dr. Arnold of Villanova used astrological medicine. He determined treatment timing according to the position of stars. Although ridiculous from a modern perspective, this approach provided him with structure and prevented him from panicking. The 13th strategy was continuous learning. Plague was a new disease and doctors had to keep learning continuously. Dr. Ibn al-Khatib was an Arab physician working in Granada. He carefully recorded each plague case. Trying to look for patterns, he analyzed transmission routes, symptom development, and death processes. This scientific approach gave him an advantage in survival because he understood the disease better and could take more effective measures. The 14th strategy was social distance. This concept we use in modern pandemics was actually developed by plague doctors. Dr. Nicephorus Gregoras was a physician working in Byzantium. He didn't attend social events and stayed away from crowded places. He even had limited contact with his own family. Although this was emotionally difficult, it was necessary for survival. Because plague spread through social contact, the 15th strategy was documentation. Some doctors wrote down their experiences, trying to leave knowledge for future generations. Dr. Michel Savonarola kept detailed notes while working in Ferrara. He recorded which treatments worked and which didn't. This approach gave him pattern recognition ability. The 16th strategy was spiritual support. Working during the plague era was not just a medical battle, but also a spiritual one. Richard D. Berry worked as both a bishop and physician in Durham. He prayed for hours daily, trying to keep his spiritual strength high. This maintained his morale and helped him cope with stress. The 17th strategy was economic planning. Doctors working during the plague era also tried to secure themselves economically. Dr. Jacopo da Foro requested advance payment from his patients, because if the patient died, there was no chance of getting paid. This economic security allowed him to make long-term plans. The 18th strategy was geographic. Mobility. Some doctors changed locations according to plague density. Dr. John Afghanistan traveled between various cities in England. If plague became very bad in one place, he immediately moved to another. This nomadic lifestyle increased his survival chances. The 19th strategy was family protection. Some doctors sent their families out of the city and stayed alone. Termandino di Luzzi sent his wife and children to the village while working in Bologna. Although this was emotionally difficult, it was necessary to protect his family, because doctors were putting not just themselves, but also their families at risk. The 20th strategy was technology innovation. Some doctors invented their own survival tools. Dr. Hugh of Lucca developed special disinfectant mixtures, vinegar, salt, various herbs. He applied these mixtures to his hands and face, trying to protect himself from bacteria. This was early antiseptic use. Although ineffective by modern standards, it was considered revolutionary for that period. The 21st strategy was mental health maintenance. Working during the plague era could lead to severe. Dr. Johannes D. Ketham did music therapy. Every evening he played musical instruments, sang songs, trying to relax his mind. This maintained his mental balance. The 22nd strategy was peer support. Surviving doctors tried to support each other. Dr. Bartolomeo da Varignano organized regular meetings with other doctors in Bologna, experience sharing, moral support, practical advice. These meetings kept doctors' morale high. The 23rd strategy was early warning systems. Some doctors tried to predict the direction of the epidemic by tracking plague cases. Dr. Marsilius of Padua collected information from different parts of the city, which neighborhoods had increasing case numbers, which areas were safe. This intelligence affected his strategic decisions. The 24th strategy was resource management. Medical supplies became very scarce during the plague era. Dr. Lanfranc Milan used his medical supplies carefully. He didn't use the same tool for every patient. Trying to prevent cross-contamination, resource optimization provided him longer survival. The 25th strategy was adaptive behavior. Successful survivor doctors quickly adapted to changing conditions. Dr. William of Salicetto initially used traditional methods, but when these didn't work, he started trying radical approaches. This flexibility was the key to his survival. This adaptation ability was a natural selection process. Rigid doctors died, flexible ones survived. But the most important factor in survival was luck. Even doctors who took the best precautions died. Even the most careless ones could survive. Dr. Jean de Venette took no protective measures in Paris, but due to genetic predisposition, he didn't catch the plague, according to his chronicle. This was divine intervention. Modern science explains this situation better. Some people had natural immunity. CCR5 gene mutation provided resistance against plague bacteria. Most surviving doctors used multiple strategies. A single approach wasn't enough. A comprehensive survival plan was needed. Dr. Gentile da Foligno wrote the most comprehensive manual. During the plague era, his work Consilia contra Pestilentium was like a survival guide. It covered physical protection, mental health, spiritual guidance, everything. This manual was widely circulated in Europe. Other doctors increased their survival chances by following these guidelines. But the most important lesson was this: there was no perfect protection. Even the best survival strategies didn't guarantee 100% safety. Death was always possible. This awareness made doctors both humble and determined. They lived each day as if it were their last, but still made plans for the future. The legacy left by plague doctors is enormous. Many principles of modern medicine were developed in that period: infection control measures, personal protective equipment, quarantine protocols, public health surveillance, evidence-based medicine, peer review systems. These heroic stories inspire modern healthcare workers. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many doctors drew strength from the courage of plague doctors. Dr. Anthony Fauci mentioned plague doctors at the beginning of the pandemic. They fought without modern PPE, without scientific knowledge or conditions. Much better, he said. This perspective boosted the morale of modern healthcare workers because it showed under what difficult conditions their ancestors worked. The sacrifice of plague doctors should not be forgotten. They knew they would die by doing this job, but they still fulfilled their duties. This selflessness became the core value of the medical profession. Patient care is more important than personal risk. This principle is still valid today. In modern medical education, the stories of plague doctors are told in medical ethics courses. Their dedication is shown as an example. Dr. William Osler, the father of modern medicine, was greatly influenced by plague doctors. Medicine is about serving others regardless of personal cost, he said. This philosophy shaped the medical profession. The foundation of the doctor-patient relationship was laid during the plague era. The memory of plague doctors is honored in medical schools. Most medical schools have a plague doctor award. It's given to the most courageous student. This tradition preserves the values of the medical profession. It reminds the new generation that medicine is a noble calling. The innovations of plague doctors were also remarkable. The prototype of modern PPE was the plague doctor costume. Modern quarantine systems were developed in that period. Contact tracing, pandemic response protocols, public health measures, all were invented during the plague era. These innovations were born from necessity. Innovation was needed for survival. This creativity became the driving force of medical advancement. Modern researchers study the notes of plague doctors. The medical practices of that period provide valuable insights. Historical epidemiology is a growing field. By studying past pandemics, preparation is made for future pandemics. The experience of plague doctors is an invaluable data source. Their survival strategies contribute to modern pandemic preparedness. In WHO pandemic response guidelines, historical lessons are included. The teachings of the plague era influence global health policy. Tonight, while telling the heroic struggle of plague doctors, I want to show respect to their memory. They were the real heroes of medicine. In impossible conditions and hopeless situations, they never gave up. They made patient care a priority and personal safety secondary. Modern healthcare workers continue the legacy of plague doctors. Same dedication, same courage, same commitment. Medicine is built on the sacrifice of plague doctors. Their foundation made modern healthcare possible. Thank you for sharing this incredible survival story tonight. I hope you have peaceful dreams. And remember, the spirit of medical heroes is still alive. Good night, friends.